Hey guys, tonight we travel somewhere warm, dry, and a little dusty, straight into the rhythmic heart of 9th century Ghana, where laundry isn't just a chore, but a communal ritual full of tradition, grit, and the occasional goat interruption. You stand on the edge of a Sahelian village, just as the golden light softens into lavender and the last market calls echo over the wind-blown plain. The air smells of wood smoke, millet, and something vaguely like limes, but probably isn't. You glance down at your dusty linen tunic, spoiler alert, it won't stay white for long. This isn't the laundry you know. No detergent pods, no white noise of a front loader humming gently in a utility closet. Instead, laundry here is an act of patience, rhythm, and community done by hand, under the wide open sky, with only the stars and maybe a curious donkey for company. And yes, you probably wouldn't survive this heat, but don't worry, we'll keep things breezy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The village smells like evening ash, cooked rice, and fabric stiff from sun. You're walking barefoot, your toes sinking into reddish earth still warm from the day. Around you, squat houses of packed mud curve gently like sleeping animals. Laundry hangs slack on thorny twine, catching the breeze like prayer flags. A dog sighs. Your task tonight? Simple. You're going to help with laundry. But not just any laundry, this is the slow, sun-kissed, gossip-laced kind of laundry that takes all day and finishes just as the moon peeks out. The kind that starts, oddly enough, with walking. Because here, water isn't piped in. You follow the others, mostly women, mostly chatting, in a slow, swaying procession toward the water source, each balancing a wide, shallow calabash bowl on her head. The rhythm is mesmerizing. Step, sway, laugh, adjust. One woman sings a line from a folk song about a crocodile stealing someone's wedding trousers. Nobody seems alarmed. Historians still argue whether these early Ghanaian communities were more matrilineal or patrilineal, but one thing is clear, the women ran the wash scene. You trail behind a girl about your age, maybe 13, who shoots you a look that says, "Keep up, stranger," but not unkindly. She's barefoot too, and wears a wrap pattern with tiny faded birds. By the time you reach the river, or rather, the sandy ditch that pretends to be a river during dry season, it's almost night. This is the Kalikoro stream, narrow and meandering, more dependable than it looks. Water shimmers darkly in little pockets between rocks. Frogs are out, serenading no one in particular. Now begins the first step, soaking. Garments, from plain white tunics to carefully embroidered wrappers, are submerged and weighted with stones. The air is alive with movement, skirts swish, hands slap water, jokes float into the dusky air. You're handed a stiff cotton smock and told, simply, scrub. You kneel on a flat rock that smells faintly of sun and lichen. The water's surprisingly cold. You dip the smock and begin rubbing it with your knuckles, the way the others do. Someone laughs when you nearly drop it downstream. You pretend you meant to do that. There's no soap, not really. Just river water, elbow grease, and sometimes ground plant ash or a pinch of sand for the stubborn bits. One older woman leans close and whispers conspiratorially that if you spit on the cloth before rubbing, it lifts goat fat stains better. You try not to ask how she knows that. A mainstream historical fact, the 9th century kingdom of Ghana wasn't actually where modern Ghana is, it sat further north, in what is now southeastern Mauritania and western Mali. It was a powerful and wealthy realm, rich in gold and salt, and home to bustling trading towns like Kumbi Sala. But beyond the markets and palaces, life hummed in small villages like this one, where survival depended on community, storytelling, and well-timed laundry. Someone starts humming a lullaby. Another picks up a rhythm, tapping cloth against stone. The girl beside you starts harmonizing softly. Before long, the whole group has fallen into a loose, gentle melody that turns washing into music. This isn't a chore. It's a kind of meditation, a way of breathing together, scrubbing not just fabric but the dust and worry of the week away. You pause and look up. The sky is ink blue now, and stars are blinking into view like someone poked tiny holes in a velvet ceiling. The moon, a faint curve, rises over the acacia trees. The soaking continues. Some of the older women pull out strips of darker fabric, already dyed and folded. These require special handling. They aren't scrubbed, but gently pressed and rinsed, to preserve their color. A few of the patterns are old enough to be named Snake's Foot, Wind Path, and one called A Cloud That Hides Gold, which you think sounds like a weather forecast written by a poet. A child falls into the water with a squeal, and everyone laughs. The mother doesn't even look up, she just calls, "Rinse your ears while you're in there." There's a fringe tidbit here: some villages believed certain stains were spiritual. Left by curses, bad dreams, or even jealous neighbors. Those garments were soaked with special herbs, like baobab bark or bitter leaves, and placed in the moonlight for airing out. You see one such cloth now, lying perfectly still on a stone, guarded by a rooster. As the first round of washing ends, garments are wrung out, twisted expertly like thick ropes, and laid over low bushes or hooked onto thorny branches of the acacia trees. You try wringing your own tunic and promptly soak your foot. The girl beside you stifles a laugh and helps. The night deepens, but no one's in a hurry. This is the pace of people who know the sun will rise tomorrow, and there's always more dust to shake out. You lie back on a warm rock, damp and drowsy, listening to the soft slap of cloth, the distant crackle of a cooking fire, and a woman somewhere telling a story about a hyena who married a woman and regretted it. A bat flits overhead. You smile. You wake, or maybe you never quite slept. Just drifted, eyes half-lidded under a sky smeared with stars and stories. The world smells different now. Damp linen. Wet earth. A faint tinge of fermented fruit from someone's forgotten gourd of sorghum beer. Your arms are tired but pleasantly so, like after a long swim. The water's quieter now. That's how you know morning's still a few whispers away. But already, a few early risers are headed toward the river with bowls balanced neatly on their heads. This, you learn quickly, is not laziness or procrastination. Laundry here is always racing something: heat, dust, wild animals, and especially water. You watch a woman poke the riverbed with a long stick, checking how much the water has dropped overnight. She clicks her tongue. Bad news. The stream is skinnier today. In 9th century Ghana, you don't own your time entirely because the river decides your schedule. It's not just a water source. It's a calendar, a co-worker, and sometimes a prankster. It floods when you least expect it. It vanishes for weeks. It deposits muddy surprises after a storm. And it teaches you to work with rhythm, not resistance. A mainstream fact: many ancient West African settlements, including those in the Ghana Empire, strategically developed near seasonal rivers and trade paths, relying on water cycles for everything from farming to textile production. Some historians believe that access to consistent water sources played a bigger role in political power than even gold. Here in the village, there's no clock. But people know when it's time to wash by watching the shadows, the wind, and the songs of birds that seem, somehow, to act like laundry alarms. The pied crow calls? Time to rinse. A dry whir from the sunbird? You missed your spot. You grab a bowl and follow the crowd again. Back to the same stream, though now it looks more like an old snake napping in the dust. Everyone's hurrying, but not frantically. Just with a certain precision. You get the sense they've done this forever. And they probably have. But here's the twist, sometimes the river simply disappears. Not forever, but enough to complicate things. During the peak of the dry season, families may walk for hours to find an alternate watering spot. Sometimes they settle for communal wells, though those come with their own drama, mainly involving whose cousin took too long and who's been cutting in line since the rainy season. Today, you're lucky. There's still water left in the deeper pools, shaded by palm leaves and stubborn rocks. The women begin again, this time with laundry that was left soaking overnight, stained blankets, ceremonial cloths, and one rather ambitious leather tunic that smells like it lost a fight with a goat. One woman points at a stain and mutters, "Rain came too early." You're not sure what that means, but nod wisely. Here's your quirky tidbit: in some parts of ancient West Africa, people believed that certain rivers were moody or even sentient. A river might like some families and refuse to cooperate with others. There were songs, some sung directly to the water, meant to coax it into rising or calming. One legend even tells of a woman who married the river spirit just to get her laundry done faster. Spoiler: the honeymoon was damp. You're back at your washing rock, getting better now. Your wrists find a rhythm. Scrub, dunk, twist. The trick isn't brute force. It's finesse. A flick of the wrist here. A slow roll of the fabric there. You start humming without realizing it. Historians still argue, someone says behind you, not to you, but to another woman, as if mid-debate. Whether the cloth came from Gao or Kombi. You turn slightly, pretending not to eavesdrop. They're discussing a red-dyed smock with fine stitching and a small ivory toggle. Imported fabric, maybe. Prestige cloth. The kind that would have passed from merchant to noble, maybe even to someone in the king's retinue. That's the thing about rivers, they carry more than just water. They carry trade. Stories. Stains. You pause to splash your face. The water's bracing, and the morning heat is already gathering its courage. One of the older women dips a woven basket into the stream and pulls out a calabash filled with what looks like bark powder. She sprinkles a bit into her bowl, murmurs something rhythmic almost like a lullaby, and begins washing a child's garment. You recognize the song from last night. It's not magic, exactly. But it is memory. These rituals aren't superstition, they're knowledge in disguise. Laundry, here, is science, story, and survival wrapped in cotton and sweat. Someone yells from farther upstream. A patch of the river has darkened, fresh water coming in. There's a cheer, soft and tired but sincere. The water level rises a few inches, and suddenly the mood shifts. People begin rinsing faster, more hopefully. There's momentum now. You drag your bowl closer, your feet sinking into fine, silty mud. A woman helps you balance the cloth on your knee as you wring it out. She nods at your form. Almost like you've done this before, she teases. You grin. Almost. As the sun crests higher, casting golden bands over the water, the group starts to wrap up. Soaking cloths are lifted, folded carefully, not wrung if they're embroidered or delicate. Others are slapped against flat rocks for a final rinse. You notice that one cloth, bright yellow with hand-painted spirals, has a small burn mark near the hem. You don't ask. Here's a fun observation. Water from the first rinse is never wasted. Some families use it to cool cooking stones, rinse feet, or even dampen dusty doorsteps. Everything has two uses, the girl beside you says casually, as if she's reciting a proverb. Maybe she is. You help carry the bundles uphill, back toward the village. They're heavier now, soaked and glistening. The sun is fully awake, and flies hover hopefully, looking for yesterday's lunch. A boy runs past you with a goat in tow, shouting something about his sister hiding his best shirt. Back on the clothesline, still strung between two stubborn trees, you help hang the fabrics with carved wooden pegs. They flap proudly in the breeze, like flags of a nation built on water and fabric. One cloth falls, and the girl grabs it before it hits the ground. You drop it, you rinse it again, she says. Rule of life. By midday, the water is low again. The river is retreating into itself, becoming secretive. The sound of scrubbing fades. Pots clatter. Roosters gossip. And the wind picks up just enough to ripple through the cloth, dancing, drying, whispering secrets you almost understand. Your fingers are pruny now, your knees dusty, and your shoulder bears a damp patch where a surprisingly heavy tunic slid loose from its bowl. You'd think laundry might be done for the day, but no, this is just the rinse before the real wash. Because in 9th century Ghana, soap as you know it doesn't exist yet. Instead, it's time for the magic mix: ash, clay, bark, and just a dash of mystery. You're ushered into the shade of a nearby hut, walls cool and smelling of old smoke and woven grass. There's a large clay pot in the corner, lid slightly askew. You peek inside and find a silvery, grainy substance that smells faintly like campfire and pepper. That's not breakfast, that's soap ash. Here's your mainstream fact. Long before store-bought soap, many African cultures created effective cleaners by mixing ashes from burned plants, especially shea or baobab wood, with water, producing an alkaline solution. It worked brilliantly, gentler than lye soap, but enough to cut through oils and even treat skin conditions. Sustainable? You bet. Eco-conscious before it was cool. A woman scoops some of the mixture into a gourd and adds a little river water, swirling it expertly. Let it wake up, she says, as if the mixture is a pet. It fizzes a little. You're handed a small brush made from dried palm fibers and a shirt with what appears to be millet porridge glued into the collar. The scrub begins. You dip, scrub, splash. Dip, scrub, splash. The rhythm is hypnotic. The ash solution leaves a faint gray residue on your hands, but the cloth is softening, losing its grime. Around you, others are at work, some kneeling, some squatting, some sitting on tiny carved stools. One woman whistles tunelessly as she works, but somehow it fits. And here's your quirky tidbit: in some communities, special ingredients were added to activate the washing mix. Crushed snail shells. A pinch of termite mound. Even, reportedly, powdered bones used not for their cleansing power, but as spiritual protection. Because some believed evil spirits could hide in garments. Washing wasn't just about dirt, it was a spiritual reset. One elder woman insists on rubbing a particular cloth with a thick brown paste that smells like eucalyptus and regret. You ask what it is. She says, leaves that don't lie. You decide not to press further. Historians still argue whether these magical additives were based on early chemistry, plant antiseptics, natural acids, or whether they were purely symbolic. Probably both. The line between ritual and science blurs easily here. And anyway, the cloth comes out clean. Your elbows ache now, but your mind has wandered somewhere quiet. You start to notice the details, the way the sun slices through tiny holes in the thatch roof. The soft crinkle of drying leaves underfoot. The smell of something stewing, onions, goat, maybe hope. The girl from earlier appears beside you with a bucket and a smirk. "You missed a spot," she says, dabbing your nose with a wet rag. You pretend to chase her, but she's already gone, laughing. Outside, another group is working with red clay paste used especially for fabrics dyed in indigo or black, to keep the color from bleeding. They coat the cloth with clay, let it dry, and beat it gently against a wide flat rock. It looks like they're trying to scare the stains out. One man insists that the earth itself remembers what color things should be. Nearby, children are helping in their own way, mostly by getting in the way. One toddler sits inside a laundry bowl, giggling as his older sister tries to fish him out without spilling the rinsing water. You can't help but laugh. Laundry here is rarely solitary. It's a group effort, a family project, a living rhythm. As the clay and ash scrubs continue, you spot a charm pouch sewn into the hem of a headscarf. You wouldn't have noticed, except the woman turns it inside out while scrubbing, carefully keeping it dry. You ask what's inside. She shrugs and says, luck. Or memory. The pouch is sealed shut with wax. In some households, it's common to sew small tokens, beads, teeth, dried herbs, into clothing, especially for children or travelers. Washing them required care, gentleness, sometimes even a whispered blessing. You find your hands slowing as you wash now. Like maybe you're handling more than just cotton. One woman stands and stretches, arms high above her head. "Time for the lazy rinse," she jokes, and everyone laughs. The lazy rinse is the final dunk in a communal bowl, often shared by multiple households. Clothes are swished around with less intensity, mostly just to cool off and loosen any leftover suds. You help gather the finished pieces, now smelling faintly of smoke, ash, and the sun. A breeze kicks up, and the fabrics ripple like sails. You carry a stack to the drying line, careful not to drop anything in the dust. Here's a callback. Remember that burn mark from earlier? You overhear someone say it was from a hot stone used during a ritual drying. Apparently, the stone was blessed and then forgotten under the fabric. Oops. But the cloth is still considered lucky. A blessing is a blessing, even if it leaves a scorch. By now, the ash mixture has settled into every crevice of your nails. Your skin feels gritty, raw, oddly refreshed. You breathe in deeply and taste the day, dirt and dignity, labor and laughter. It's not just laundry. It's something older. Something woven into the fibers of the community itself. A woman hands you a fresh cloth, dyed pale blue and patterned with swirling circles. "For you," she says. "Tomorrow, you'll need something clean to wear." You blink. Tomorrow? Laundry, it seems, is never done. Your hands ache in that oddly satisfying way, scrubbed raw, tingling slightly, and still vaguely smelling like wood ash and fermented bark. You stretch your back, brush dust off your tunic, and follow the hum of voices down toward the lower riverbank. The sound you're hearing isn't wind or wildlife. It's rhythm. Wet, pulsing rhythm. The next phase of your initiation into 9th century Ghanaian laundry is all about beating clothes, but not out of frustration. Well, maybe a little frustration. But mostly it's technique, music, and muscle memory. As you approach, the scene unfolds like a waterborne symphony. Dozens of women kneel at the river's edge, each with her own rhythm, slapping wet garments against flat river rocks. The sound is hypnotic, thwop, thwop thwop. Thwop. The air pulses with it. You stop short, not wanting to interrupt the song. Here's your mainstream historical fact: across West Africa, laundry beating was more than just a method of cleaning. It was a recognized technique. In many communities, the sound of laundry being beaten was considered a normal part of daily life, even a comforting one. Some regions even developed distinct beating rhythms, passed down like family recipes. You kneel beside a woman wearing a faded wrap pattern with cowrie shells. She hands you a tunic heavier than it looks and motions toward the flat rock. You give it a tentative slap. The sound is underwhelming. She raises an eyebrow. You try again. Harder this time, and the sound snaps across the water like a drumbeat. She nods approvingly. Now that's laundry. But there's more to it than force. It's about letting the water weigh the cloth, timing the slap just as the fabric flattens in the air. It's part choreography, part percussion. And yes, it's weirdly fun. You find yourself falling into sync with the woman next to you. She's humming a low tune between gritted teeth, clearly concentrating. Across the riverbank, other groups are echoing the rhythm. One woman is definitely harmonizing with her laundry beat. Someone else calls out a joke involving a crocodile, a lost loincloth, and a very embarrassed fisherman. Here's your quirky tidbit: in some villages, laundry beating competitions were a real thing. Young women would challenge each other to see who could beat a full set of clothing clean the fastest, without tearing it. It wasn't just fun. It was low-key matchmaking. A girl with strong arms and a good rhythm? Basically the Beyoncé of the village. You try to keep up, your arms growing sore, your breathing matching the beat. The cloth grows softer, lighter. Soaked grit flies off into the river. Tiny fish dart around, possibly annoyed. Historians still argue whether this musicality in laundry rituals was deliberate or incidental. Was it born of necessity? Or was the beat a form of oral tradition, an unconscious echo of ancestral drumming? Probably both. Everything here is a little bit both. Suddenly, a shift in tempo. The women begin changing the beat, slowing down. Some rise to wring out their cloths again. Others begin folding smaller pieces, scarves, infant wraps, headbands, and setting them aside. You take a break, letting the cool river water rush over your fingers. Your reflection looks back at you, distorted by ripples. Behind you, the village is waking again. Smoke curling from huts, the bleating of goats, someone yelling about a missing cooking pot. But here at the river, laundry is still the main show. A young boy comes skipping past with a gourd full of flowers. He dips a handful into the water and sprinkles it on a cloth that looks more ceremonial than everyday. You're told this is a form of blessing, reserved for special garments worn during rites of passage, births, and sometimes burials. Make it smell like the ancestors remember, the boy mutters. You get up and stretch. Your knees crack. A goat eyeballs you skeptically. Another woman gestures to the rocks where garments are being pressed by hand, smoothed out, stretched, realigned. No irons, of course, but the technique is deliberate. A sharp fingernail edge here. A smooth shell passed over a stubborn wrinkle there. And then, the finale, air percussion. Garments are held aloft and flapped sharply before hanging. The motion shakes loose wrinkles, sand, and, possibly, spirits. You try it with a tunic. It billows like a ship sail, then settles. The fabric breathes. You don't realize you're smiling until someone hands you a piece of flatbread, warm and smoky from a morning fire. A few women laugh. Laundry tax, they say. You accept the bread and tear off a bite. It's chewy and laced with something peppery. Heaven. A group farther downstream is experimenting with stonewalking, a technique that involves laying cloth across submerged stones and then walking across it slowly to squeeze out water. It looks bizarre. It feels bizarre. But when someone gestures for you to try it, you do. You step tentatively on a long strip of white cotton, laid like a bridge over 3 slick stones. Your toes sink into the fabric, pressing water upward and outward. It's like foot massaging your way through a rinse cycle. The girl who teased you earlier gives you a thumbs up. You give her a half bow, nearly fall, and hear her cackle with joy. The midday sun is starting to climb. Flies are growing bolder. People are wrapping up, gathering bundles, shifting wet garments toward the drying zone and open space studded with bush posts and flat-topped rocks. A breeze picks up just in time. And just when you think you've seen it all, someone pulls out a bundle of tiny dolls. Cloth dolls, stained and worn, some no bigger than a thumb. They're lined up neatly and washed with slow, reverent motions. You ask why. Memory, the woman says. We wash them so they remember. You don't ask more. You don't need to. By now, the beats have faded. The percussion has ended. The garments lie in folded stacks or flutter in the breeze. The rocks are quiet again. Only the river continues to murmur. You pat your hands dry on a nearby cloth, probably not yours, and smile at the feeling of being allowed into this world, just for a day. Or at least for a full rinse cycle. The sun is officially awake now, stretching long fingers of heat over everything it can touch. The air carries a dry buzz, like someone left a giant oven cracked open just for you. You shield your eyes and glance toward the village, but no one's heading home yet. There's still one step left, and it's more art than effort. Drying. Not just draping and hoping. No, here in 9th century Ghana, drying laundry involves placement, sunlight angles, breeze-catching tactics, and the delicate avoidance of goat interference. You help haul bundles toward the drying space, which is basically a sunlit clearing between acacia trees, peppered with bush pegs and long ropes stretched taut like the strings of a giant, invisible harp. The air here smells like warmed linen, tree sap, and dust. You step carefully. There's a beetle dragging what looks like an entire seed pod across your path. Respect. Your task now is deceptively simple: hang the clean, damp clothes. But like everything else in this world, even this comes with unspoken rules and subtle rituals. Mainstream historical fact: many early West African communities used thorny branches, tree trunks, or pegged racks made of twisted vines to dry clothes, positioning them to catch both sun and airflow. The harsh dry season required clothes to dry quickly to avoid mildew or sand accumulation. You're handed a thick, embroidered wrapper, still damp and heavy, and shown a specific rope. This one's for ceremonial, the woman says. Not with the everyday sweat tunics. You nod solemnly. No mixing of energy, apparently. Just like you wouldn't put your nice party shoes next to your gym socks if you had shoes, which you currently don't. Some cloths are hung by looping corners over rope. Others are pegged in place with carved wooden clips that look like birds or stars. You learn quickly not to hang dyed fabrics under direct light for too long. Sun fade is real. These folks didn't have sunscreen, but their clothes definitely needed it. Here's your quirky tidbit: in some areas, people would sing to the laundry while hanging it. Not lullabies, but short chants, half reminders, half prayers, to keep spirits from settling into the garments. Wind, take the burden; sun, bring the joy, one woman mutters as she pegs a baby wrap. You try repeating it. The wind answers by flipping a tunic into your face. Historians still argue whether the careful segmentation of drying spaces was a spiritual practice, a social code, or just basic organization. But it's clear the act carried meaning. The drying area is part temple, part town square, part runway. You pause to wipe sweat from your brow. The sun has begun to shimmer on the rock faces nearby. A child uses one to press out wrinkles, laying a piece of damp fabric across it and gently smoothing it with a gourd shell. Stone ironing, she calls it, grinning. The cloth will dry with a pressed look, nature's ironing board. As you wander between rows of drying cloth, the effect is cinematic. Flapping panels of indigo, ochre, and creamy white. The wind sends them dancing. You walk slowly, arms out, brushing the fabric with your fingers. It's like moving through a sea of silent voices. Each pattern tells a story. Each wrinkle carries a name. A woman shouts suddenly. Everyone freezes. A goat, yes, again, has charged into the drying area and is gleefully chewing the corner of a crimson wrap. Absolute scandal. Shouts erupt. Children give chase. The goat, clearly unbothered, bounds off into the trees, trailing fabric like some chaotic fashion icon. Someone sighs and says, "That goat needs a wife." You're not sure what that means, but you agree entirely. You help rewash the wrap, just the edge, and hang it higher this time, looping it over a taller branch. A boy appears with a bundle of thorn twigs and begins reinforcing the perimeter. A makeshift fence. Goat proofing, version 9.0. A woman sidles up beside you, holding a bright orange cloth printed with concentric spirals. "This one's for morning," she says, smoothing it out with reverence. "We dry it with the spirals facing east. Toward rebirth." You nod, unsure what to say. The cloth flaps softly. Nearby, someone fans a cloth with a palm leaf to keep flies away. Another gently shakes sand off a nearly dry tunic, the grains catching sunlight like glitter. Everything here is done with intention, even the flapping. You notice someone folding a cloth just as it finishes drying. Not sharp corners like hotel linens, but with soft tucks and twists, made to prevent creases and preserve the shape. One wrap is folded and laid in the crook of a tree. "Let the tree hold it," the woman explains. Here's another callback. Remember that burn-marked cloth from earlier? It's now draped over a sun-warmed boulder, soaking in the last of the heat. The owner hums softly as she adjusts its edges. "Let the scorch know it's still welcome," she murmurs. You find a spot in the shade, watching as more clothes finish drying. The acacia branches creak. A child is scolded gently for trying to use a drying scarf as a superhero cape. Someone shares a bowl of fermented hibiscus drink, sour and refreshing, and you take a slow sip. The sun begins to tilt westward. The wind picks up just a little. One by one, cloths are lifted, folded, and gathered into bundles stacked on heads, tied into shoulder wraps, or slung over arms. The drying zone empties, slowly, like a tide rolling back. All that remains is the faint scent of sun-warmed dye and a few loose threads caught in the branches. You glance up and see the woman from earlier motioning you over. She hands you your now dry tunic, smelling like smoke, sunshine, and river water. You hold it up. It's clean. It's warm. It's yours. And tomorrow? It'll probably get dirty again. But that's okay. Laundry never ends here. And weirdly, you don't want it to. The bundles are heavy, but everyone carries them like trophies, balanced expertly atop heads, arms swinging loose, backs straight, postures proud. You trail behind the group, the scent of sun-dried cloth and dust clinging to the breeze. Laughter rises and falls in waves. Someone sings a teasing rhyme about laundry lines tangled in love triangles. You're not just heading home. You're heading into a courtyard pulsing with color, steam, and heat, the heart of the village's dying trade. Because here's the thing, laundry doesn't end with clean clothes. In 9th century Ghana, some clothes become something greater, stained not by mistake, but by mastery. You duck into the shaded courtyard and are instantly swallowed by a blur of motion. Women squat over steaming pots. Smoke curls up from open fires. Bright skeins of cloth hang from thick cords like jungle vines. Pots bubble, hiss, and stain the earth beneath them in puddles of blue, red, and rust. Welcome to the dye pots of the kingdom. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The Kingdom of Ghana was a major node in regional trade, and dyed textiles, especially those treated with natural indigo, kola nuts, or tree bark, were valuable both locally and in trans-Saharan commerce. Certain patterns and colors signaled status, profession, or clan. If your tunic said the wrong thing, it could cause problems. And if it said the right thing? Doors opened. A tall woman in a red sash greets you with a nod. "No clean cloth leaves here looking naked," she says, grinning. "We dress the fabric in truth. You love that." She hands you a folded smock, plain and beige. "This one's for the storyteller." You blink. "You mean me?" She shrugs. "Maybe. Or the next one. Doesn't matter. It needs color." You're guided to a large basin of indigo dye. Not the bright artificial stuff you've seen before, but a deep, inky black blue that seems to shimmer with secrets. It's made from fermented leaves, water, and thyme. It smells sharp and grassy, like something old and alive. You plunge the cloth in slowly. The woman counts aloud. 1, 2, 7, 10, pull. You yank the smock up, and it emerges green. "What?" you ask. She grins. "Wait." And you do. Within seconds, the green cloth starts shifting. Oxidizing as air hits it, turning slowly, softly into deep indigo. It's like watching the sky darken at twilight. You stare. Magic? Science? Both. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some traditions, dye workers were seen as mystics, not quite priests, but certainly wielders of powerful substances. Some refused to dye cloth on certain days. Others wore charms to keep the spirits of the dyes from marking their soul. It's said that a true indigo master never had clean hands. Just permanently blue ones. You check your fingers. Yep. Very blue. Historians still argue whether dyeing guilds existed in the same structured sense as in other ancient empires like Rome or Egypt. But one thing's certain, dyeing wasn't random. It was a craft, often passed from mother to daughter, with rules, taboos, and recipes protected like treasure. You move to another station, kola nut dye. This one smells sweet? Bitter? You can't tell. A cloth dropped in here comes out rust red. Another basin bubbles with a concoction that stains fabric golden. A child is stirring it with a palm stick, serious as a sorcerer. One older man, the only male dyer here, uses clay stamps to apply patterns to cloth before dyeing. "Resist dye," he says, barely looking up. "Stamp the places you want the dye to fear." You lean closer. The stamps are carved with animals, moons, and mysterious squiggles. Each symbol has a name. Each pattern tells a story. You recognize one from earlier, wind path. It's stamped into a cloth that now blows pale blue against creamy white. It flutters on a nearby line, as if trying to escape. The woman in the red sash walks past and runs her hand down a newly dyed tunic. "This one will walk in a wedding," she says. Another gets a curt nod, that one mourns. Colors speak here. And the cloth listens. You help stir a pot with a stick long enough to be a walking staff. The dye smells like boiled bark and sharp green leaves. Forest's tongue, someone calls it. Makes you brave if you wear it. You raise an eyebrow. Even if you're already scared? The woman smiles. Especially then. She shows you a full dyeing technique called wrapping the storm. The cloth is twisted, tied with vine, and dunked quickly into a mix of two dyes, creating cloudy, unpredictable patterns that mimic thunderclouds. For travelers, she says. So the wind knows them. Your smock is done now. You lift it from the pot. It drips. Slow, heavy drops that hit the earth like ink on parchment. The blue is deep now. Not perfect. Not even. But beautiful. The woman nods. Now it remembers you. And here's a callback, that charm pouch you saw earlier? One woman carefully dips it into the very edge of a dye pot, then shakes it dry. For luck, she murmurs. For color on the inside. The dyed fabrics are now moved to a separate drying area, not where regular clothes go. These are sacred spaces, half altar, half art gallery. Some cloths are wrapped around tree trunks. Others hang in loops like sleeping bats. All are watched. Protected. Prayed over. You sit back, warm and dizzy from heat, color, and a surprising amount of dye fumes. The sun is lower now, angling golden through the haze. The courtyard buzzes softer now, voices slowing, shadows lengthening. You sip from a bowl of sour tea and breathe in the smell of earth, sweat, dye, and maybe, just maybe, a little magic. Your smock dries nearby. When you wear it tomorrow, it will say something about you. Even if you're not sure what yet. Evening has come again, not like a switch flipped, but like a soft curtain falling across the sky. The sharp whites and blues of day melt into gentle rust in purple. Smoke rises from cook fires, mingling with the thick scent of dye and ash. But while most villagers are wrapping up their daily tasks, a smaller, more focused group heads off in the opposite direction with bowls, bundles, and a kind of hush hanging over them. You're invited to follow. No one speaks too loudly. This isn't about gossip, or rhythm, or getting goat-shoed tunics back on the line. This is about washing for the gods. Yes. Laundry is sacred too. You're led to a smaller stream, slightly upstream of the main washing zone. The air here is cooler, touched with minty plants and a faint smell like rain that hasn't arrived yet. The women here move with quiet purpose, and you notice their garments are mostly white or pale blue, colors of purity, apparently meant for spiritual duties. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Across pre-colonial West African cultures, including those within the Ghana Empire's reach, religious life was deeply embedded in everyday rituals. Ceremonial clothing was not only carefully constructed but ritually washed, often involving specific herbs, timing, and spoken blessings. Clean fabric wasn't just hygienic, it was holy. One of the elder women unwraps a bundle. Inside are folded cloths, smooth and pale, edged with red thread. For the festival, she murmurs. Another unwraps what looks like a faded tunic with a tiny cowrie shell necklace sewn into the hem. You almost miss it. Someone passes you a calabash with a different kind of wash mix. It's warm, infused with leaves, bark, and oil. The smell is incredible, like cedar and citrus, like a forest after the rain. This isn't just about scrubbing away dust. This is about inviting something in. You lower a cloth into the water. It feels heavier than others, not just in weight, but in presence. One woman mutters a short chant as she dips hers, her fingers moving in a slow, practiced spiral. You copy the motion, your hands now echoing a rhythm that feels older than the dirt beneath you. Here's your quirky tidbit: in some rituals, garments weren't considered truly clean until they had been washed with moonlight. Yes, literally left out under the full moon to absorb divine clarity. It wasn't about visible stains. It was about spiritual residue. You ask about tonight's moon and are told, waxing. Good for hope. Not for secrets. Noted. Historians still argue whether these purification rites were centralized religious practices or localized, family-based customs. The answer might lie somewhere in between. The Ghanaian world of the 9th century had no monolithic belief system. It was layered, regional, and interwoven with Islam, animism, ancestor reverence, and everyday magic. You're handed another cloth. This one child-sized, with tiny silver discs sewn into the edges. For the boy's naming, someone whispers, "Tomorrow at sunrise." You handle it gently, soaking it with care, smoothing it with your palm. The discs glint in the dim light. You wonder what name the boy will get. You hope it's something strong. A few men arrive, which surprises you. Men don't usually do the washing, but these are spirit keepers, elders or mediums, dressed in simple wraps, eyes downcast. They bring a cloth too, but it's different. Black. Rough. Worn in a way that speaks of funeral rites. No one jokes. You understand that this garment isn't being cleaned. It's being honored. They dip it in silence, then lift it high, letting water stream from it like a ritual offering. To remember, one says, and that's it. Nearby, a woman begins washing ancestor cloths, old, patched garments no longer worn but kept as tokens of family memory. These are not scrubbed. They're bathed. Pressed softly, rinsed gently, as if washing away grief one layer at a time. Here's a callback. Remember that tiny doll from earlier? You spot one nestled in the folds of an ancestor cloth now. It's tied with a bit of thread. Someone explains that cloth remembers people. Washing it is like saying their name again. It keeps the soul close. You look down at your hands. They're wet, wrinkled, and somehow steadier. You feel like you're doing something that matters. Suddenly, laughter. Quiet but full. A woman washing a white head wrap has flicked water onto another, teasing her about not scrubbing behind the spirit's ears. It's a light moment, but no one scolds. Sacred doesn't mean solemn all the time. And still, you wash. The water reflects stars now. The breeze has turned cool, lifting the wet cloths in slow, ghostly arcs. You've never seen anything so beautiful. A final act, the cloths are not hung. They're laid flat on polished stones, each one carefully positioned by direction: east for beginnings, west for endings, north for guidance, south for strength. A map of prayers in fabric form. You kneel beside the woman in the pale blue wrap. She hands you a bowl of scented water and says, "Wash your own hands, too. Let the gods see you clean." You do. And when you stand, you feel lighter. The stars are watching. The cloths sleep, cooling on the stones. And the night, now full and whispering, tucks you all in. Word count, 1093, morning doesn't exactly arrive, it sort of leans in slowly, like a friend who's decided not to knock. The air lightens. Shadows dissolve. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster announces the day like he just invented it. You're already awake. People here rise early, and if you want to catch a glimpse of what's inside a typical laundry basket in 9th century Ghana, you have to move before the sun gets too confident. You walk into a courtyard where today's washing is just beginning. No dye vats this time. No ceremonial silences. This is everyday laundry, and it is gloriously messy. Bundles are unwrapped onto mats, tunics, wrappers, scarves, and all manner of little fabric odds and ends. Some are folded neatly, others arrive in tangled clumps that may or may not contain a lizard. You kneel beside a woman who's already sorting. She speaks without looking up. If it smells like goat, it was worn yesterday. If it smells like fire, it hasn't been worn yet. You inhale subtly. She's not wrong. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Garments in West African communities were often passed down through families, repaired repeatedly, and repurposed over decades. Some outfits were built from several layers of inherited fabric, quilt-like, practical, and meaningful. The result? Laundry baskets filled with both clothing and history. The first thing you're handed is a linen tunic. Plain, slightly yellowed, with rough stitching along the sleeves. Workwear, you're told. It has red smudges on the collar. Millet beer accident, the woman adds with a wink. You chuckle. This tunic has lived. Next, a baby wrap, soft, thin, and patterned with faded leaves. You hold it carefully. There's a small square sewn inside, almost like a patch. When you ask, she says, "For luck." So the baby doesn't forget where she came from. You feel suddenly nervous just folding it. Another bundle contains a man's wrap skirt, wide, richly dyed, but torn at the edge. You hold it up. Battle cloth, someone murmurs. Not real battle. Argument with his brother-in-law. Laundry always knows more than it lets on. Then, your quirky tidbit, among the random items tucked into laundry bundles, you find a dried fishtail, a flattened gourd stopper, and what appears to be a carved tiny wooden spoon with teeth marks in it. He chews that when he's angry, the woman explains. Better than chewing people. You try not to laugh too loudly. There's even an embroidered sash with symbols stitched in charcoal thread. Love messages, someone says vaguely. You raise your eyebrows. You can read that? The woman just shrugs. I know enough not to wash it too hard. You take the hint and set it aside. Historians still argue whether the symbolic embroidery in these garments was purely decorative or functioned as an unspoken communication system. Kind of like textile texting. Given how many of these pieces are preserved with such care, the answer is probably yes on both counts. And there it is, the charm pouch again. This time, sewn into the lining of a child's sleeping cloth. You recognize it now, stitched with red thread, sealed at the edges. No one touches it except the mother, who unwraps the cloth slowly, folds it with a kiss, and places it in a special bowl by itself. You start to see the pattern. Laundry isn't sorted just by fabric or dirtiness. It's sorted by story, by emotion, by memory, by purpose. Over here? That's the guest pile. Reserved for people who come from other villages, used only during visits. Wash it like it's watching you, one woman says. Over there? That's the market bundle. Bright colors, stiffer cloth, scent of oil and perfume. Designed to impress, slightly annoying to scrub. There's also the problem corner. Garments with stains no one wants to admit to, mending jobs done badly, and a tunic that clearly spent a night under a cooking pot. Someone tries to bury it beneath a neater wrapper. Classic laundry behavior. You help carry the sorted items to the water's edge again. This time, there's less ceremony. More grit and banter. The water's clearer today, moving swiftly. Maybe the river's in a better mood. You kneel to wash a pair of leg wraps, frayed at the bottom and crusted with something reddish-brown. Mud or goat blood, someone shrugs. He won't say. You do your best. The wraps come clean, mostly. You feel oddly proud. Nearby, children scrub miniature shirts and cloth dolls. One little boy swats flies with a tunic like it's a weapon. Another girl accidentally drops her wash in the water, then dives after it, laughing. The village elder just shakes her head. Let the fish wear it for a while. A woman beside you holds up a cloth with a hole in the center. Fireplace wrap, she says. You wear it while cooking. The hole means it's done its job. You look at it, full of tiny burns and smoke stains. It looks like a hero. Suddenly, there's shouting. A boy has found a snakeskin inside a folded garment. Screams. Running. Laughing. It's a dry skin, harmless, but treated like a prize. Lucky, someone calls. That tunic just got stronger. The owner isn't so sure. Back at the mats, the washed items begin returning, neatly wrung and ready for drying. You spot a tiny sock with a pebble tied inside it. No one explains that one. Laundry has its secrets. Before the last bundle is folded, someone holds up a dark green wrap, faintly stained with oil and age. Belonged to the old midwife, they say. Still smells like herbs. They wash it slow. Careful. Like it still matters. You realize it does. Because these aren't just garments. They're fingerprints. And every time they're scrubbed, someone remembers. The sun climbs steadily now, relentless and unapologetic, baking the earth until it shimmers like hammered bronze. You squint toward the river, where linen and laughter still ripple in tandem. The scent of soap ash, warmed cotton, and tamarind leaves hangs thick in the air. But today, the work is slower, not because there's less of it, but because there's more to say. You've wandered into the hidden engine of the village, the laundry circle where gossip, matchmaking, politics, and rinse cycles all collide. You might have thought laundry was about water and fabric. But here in 9th century Ghana, it's just as much about social glue. You find a space under the shade of a thick fig tree, already crowded with women and older girls perched on low stools, knees pulled close, sleeves rolled up. Buckets and basins surround them like sentries. As the scrubbing begins again, so do the conversations, low at first, like distant drumbeats, then growing bolder, sharper, funnier. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Across West African societies, communal labor, especially tasks like grinding grain or doing laundry, was a time for women to build alliances, pass down oral histories, and negotiate everything from market trades to marriage matches. Some called these gatherings the parliaments under trees. A girl near you mutters something about a young man's unwashed ambitions. Laughter erupts. You pretend to be very focused on a tunic, but your ears are wide open. The topics shift rapidly. Whose cousin is about to wed, who might be pregnant but hasn't said so, which merchant came back with more gold dust than goats, always suspicious, and whether a certain neighbor has been adding something extra to her cooking to make her husband unusually agreeable. The gossip is never cruel. Sharp, yes, but almost always laced with affection. Even when someone jokes that a friend's husband couldn't wash a leaf if it fell on his own head, the friend just laughs and flicks water at her. And here's your quirky tidbit: in some communities, people believed that gossip whispered over soap suds made it softer, more truthful. But lies told while scrubbing? Those supposedly left streaks. Imagine your laundry airing you out. You try your hand at rinsing again, but it's hard to focus. Beside you, two older women are embroiled in a debate about a neighbor's stubbornly stained wrap. One swears it's from groundnut oil, the other insists it's a spiritual mark from a dream gone wrong. You ask what happens if neither side wins. Then the cloth decides, one says, nodding gravely. Historians still argue whether these laundry circles were structured or spontaneous, but nearly all agree this was a space of power. Outside the formal hierarchy of kings and merchants, this is where reputations rose and fell, where alliances were tested, and where the village pulse was taken daily alongside a rinse cycle. You're handed a head wrap, colorful, stiff with dried perfume and wood ash. That one's from the north, a woman explains. They starch it with cassava water. Smells like secrets. You sniff it. She's right. A sudden hush spreads through the group. A tall, elegant woman approaches. She's wrapped in a deep indigo cloth with silver embroidery and walks like she's already forgiven the earth for existing under her feet. She places a folded tunic on a stool and sits without a word. A few glances dart her way. You ask what's going on. That's Amma, someone whispers. She just returned. Alone. You don't ask from where. The tunic she brought is washed gently, tenderly, even. No jokes, no commentary. This, you realize, is a moment. A quiet one. But still a moment. Later, when the laughter returns, someone brings out a tunic with a very suspicious tear in a very personal location. Someone's been busy, the woman smirks. The group howls. Even Amma chuckles. You begin to see the layers. Laundry is where secrets emerge, but also where wounds are soothed, where people let themselves be seen. Not in ceremony. Not in festival. But here, knee-deep in suds, under trees, surrounded by half-scrubbed lives. You glance across the circle and see a young woman rinsing her cloth methodically, then glancing toward the village path every few minutes. Waiting for someone, you ask. She shrugs. Someone else pipes up, her fiancé hasn't written her name in his bride price list yet. The girl splashes water in her direction. A rooster crows. Uninvited commentary. A breeze stirs the cloths, and you realize you've been sitting here for nearly 2 hours, completely submerged in fabric and feelings. The rhythm is slow but absorbing. It pulls you in. Time dissolves like soap in a bowl. A woman nearby shares a handful of fried plantain chips with you. For your ears, she jokes. They've worked harder than your hands today. You agree. Before the group breaks for rest, one woman gathers her laundry and pauses. We wash together because we live together, she says, to no one in particular. Even if we fight, our water's the same. That line stays with you. The sun is overhead now, and the women begin rising, wringing out last cloths, shaking off the morning stories. One last joke. One last splash. The tree now holds their secrets. And a few damp tunics, just in case. The afternoon sun has become a tyrant, hovering high and hot, pressing everything down with a slow, weighty intensity. The trees wilt a little. The chickens give up. Even the flies seem to move in slow motion. And yet, the laundry continues, because here in 9th century Ghana, keeping your clothes intact isn't just about appearance, it's about survival. You find a spot beneath a neem tree, next to an older woman who is carefully folding a piece of fabric like it holds the secrets of a kingdom. "Desert eats everything," she says matter-of-factly. "If you don't outsmart it, you go naked. You blink." She means it. Welcome to the art of fabric care for desert survival. Let's start with a fact: clothes don't stay clean or whole for long here. Not with sandstorms, camel sweat, cooking fires, crawling babies, goat-related accidents, or the minor inconvenience of wind that carries thorns like it has a vendetta. Every piece of clothing is under siege from the moment it's worn. Here's your mainstream historical fact: in arid and semi-arid parts of West Africa, clothing wasn't disposable. It was a long-term investment, handwoven, dyed, mended, passed down. People maintained fabrics with remarkable creativity, patching holes with decorative stitches, softening sun-hardened cloth with oil rubs, and storing items in smoke-filled lofts to preserve both color and smell. The woman shows you a tunic with a rip across the chest. It's been repaired 3 times already. Once with red thread, once with raffia, and now with a patch shaped like a bird. "Every hole tells me who he used to be," she murmurs. "Now I get to help him be who he's becoming." You watch as she uses a palm needle and thread spun from cotton fuzz to mend the tear, sewing in long, looping strokes that look almost like cursive writing. Her fingers move slow, practiced. Reverent. Then comes your quirky tidbit. Some people here rub their clothes with powdered charcoal mixed with shea butter to keep insects away and to darken fabric deliberately. Why? Because light clothes show dirt too easily. Dark cloth lies better, the woman grins. White cloth tells everyone your secrets. You take mental notes. Nearby, another woman tends to a stiff, sun-baked wrap by beating it gently with a flat paddle, then massaging it with a paste made from fermented tamarind seeds. "Makes it soft again," she says. Cloth gets old. So do we. Doesn't mean we stop. You try it. The paste smells sour and earthy. The cloth slowly bends to your touch, growing more pliable, almost sighing back into usefulness. Historians still argue whether these textile care methods were standardized traditions or hyperlocal, invented per household. But they agree on one thing: fabric maintenance was a shared knowledge base, passed on quietly through practice, not theory. You learn it by doing. By watching someone older than you fold a cloth in silence and realizing that's how you keep it alive. You're handed a new task: removing embedded sand. You blink. Isn't that just impossible? Apparently not. The woman pulls out what looks like a dried root, chewed at one end. She gently scrapes it across a tunic, releasing tiny grains of red sand that had hidden deep in the weave. "Desert sand doesn't knock," she says. It climbs in and makes a bed. You find yourself oddly mesmerized by the rhythm of the scrape-scrape pat. And here's something you didn't expect: leather laundry. Someone arrives carrying a vest made of softened goat hide, darkened with age and use. It's not washed with water, but smoked. Hung above a fire pit and rubbed with crushed herbs to freshen and protect it. Smoke tells leather what not to remember, the owner says cryptically. You just nod. Back under the neem tree, you're shown how to fold for preservation. Not just quick rolls or half-hearted tucks. These are strategic folds: diagonal for wraps, rectangular for tunics, triangle tucked for belts and headbands. Why? To avoid creasing at weak points, to minimize sun exposure, and to honor the shape of the garment. You fold slowly, and somehow the cloth feels grateful. Here's a callback. Remember that embroidered sash from earlier? The one with whispered love messages? It's now being wrapped in a special leaf. A natural repellent that keeps moths away. You sniff the leaf. It smells like mint and old stories. As the afternoon deepens, people begin to store the day's cleaned garments. Some go into baskets lined with clay shards to absorb moisture. Others are hung from wooden racks inside huts, high above the ground where the wind can circulate but the mice can't. A young boy runs by wearing a tunic too big for him, laughing wildly. You're told it belonged to his grandfather. Still smells like him, the boy says. You're not sure how to process that, so you just smile. You help carry a basket of neatly folded cloths toward a raised platform beside a granary. It's shaded, quiet, slightly elevated. The woman pats the basket. Safe now, she says. Cloth likes to sleep off the day. And maybe, so do you. You stretch your arms, dust off your knees, and look around. Despite the heat and the labor, everyone here looks content. Not because laundry is easy, but because care is satisfying. And caring for what you wear. That's how you stay warm, respected, remembered. As the breeze returns, gentle, forgiving, you glance at your own smock, folded neatly nearby. It's still blue. Still you. Still ready for whatever tomorrow brings. You're starting to understand that in this world, fabric isn't just something you wear, it's something you earn. And while your arms ache and your knees feel like they've aged 40 years, you're still curious. You want to know more. Especially now, as you're led down a path lined with date palms and gossiping birds, toward a low-thatched structure with bright cloth fluttering at the doorway. This is where the secrets trade hands, someone says with a wink. Today, you're stepping into the world of textile prestige, imported cloth, and the dirty secrets they carry. You duck inside and are met with a blast of color so intense it nearly knocks you back out again. Bright reds. Deep golds. Stripes like flames. Spirals that look like they could hypnotize you if you stare too long. Welcome to the household of a trader family, one of the few in the village who regularly deal in imported fabrics. Mainstream historical fact time. By the 9th century, the Ghana Empire had become a nexus of trans-Saharan trade, dealing not only in gold and salt, but in luxury textiles. Cotton and silk from the North African coast and even the Middle East occasionally made their way into elite homes. These cloths were status symbols, rare, delicate, and eye-wateringly expensive. And yet, you notice something odd. Some of these prized fabrics? They're dirty. Not stained exactly. More like, lightly dusted. As if no one really tried that hard to clean them. You're puzzled until one of the women smirks and explains, if it's too clean, people ask questions. Ah. Prestige isn't just about what you own, it's also about how you hide it. Here's your quirky tidbit, in some families, imported cloths were intentionally smudged to avoid theft, envy, or taxation. A splash of charcoal here, a smudge of cooking oil there. Makes it look like it belongs to a cousin, the woman laughs. A cousin who isn't home right now. You're handed a thin tunic made of tightly woven cotton. It's cooler to the touch, clearly foreign, clearly expensive. The woman shows you how to wash it, minimal water, no twisting, dry in shade. Treat it like a guest, she says. No yelling. No beating. This isn't laundry. It's diplomacy. Historians still argue whether these luxury cloths were widely used by local elites or reserved for ceremonial purposes only. What's clearer is that their presence shaped how people treated clothing altogether, introducing more complex rules of care, more elaborate washing rituals, and even more suspicion. One girl points to a cloak with embroidered patterns along the hem. "That's not from here," she says quietly. "He brought it from the salt caravans. Now he only wears it when people die or when he lies." You can't tell if she's joking. You ask what happens if a foreign cloth gets truly filthy. Like goat hoof mashed into fire pit filthy. The woman frowns. "Then we bury it for a while." Pause. "Wait, what?" Apparently, it's true. Some cloths, especially spiritually sensitive or too damaged to explain, were placed under the ground for a few days to forget their disgrace. Then, once the dirt settled, literally and metaphorically, they were unearthed, rinsed, and welcomed back into service. You gently fold a faded silk sash, wondering what kind of mischief it's seen. Someone adds a sprig of dried lemongrass to the bundle. "To keep bad dreams out," she says. There's also a rumor, shared in hushed tones, that one family faked the import of their cloth by copying the weave with local looms and rubbing the edges in camel sweat. They convinced a chief it came from Tripoli, the girl whispers. He gave them a goat. The goat bit him. Justice. You laugh too loudly and are promptly shushed. Nearby, a man walks in carrying a cloak that genuinely is foreign. Dyed in such an impossibly rich indigo it seems to shine. But it's ripped at the shoulder and dotted with oil stains. He lays it down carefully, and the oldest woman in the room begins brushing it, not with water, but with a mixture of clay dust and oil, murmuring softly. You recognize this as cloth rehabilitation, not just cleaning, but restoring dignity. The man watches in silence. You're told not to speak during this process. So you don't. But you do wonder how many stories are trapped inside that cloth. Here's a callback. Remember the battle rap from earlier, the one supposedly torn during a family feud? You spot it here now, cleaned, folded, and placed beneath a foreign sash. Hidden again. Covered. Because laundry, it seems, can rewrite the past if you fold it carefully enough. Before you leave, you're invited to help lay out one last cloth, a vibrant, unfamiliar weave, marked with symbols you don't recognize. That one, the woman says quietly, was gifted by a trader who never came back. You don't ask. But you smooth it down with respect. As you step back into the light, the dust on your sandals and the smell of old thread clinging to your skin, you realize something, even dirt tells a story. And sometimes, it's the parts you choose not to wash that reveal the most. By now, you think you've seen every type of cloth the kingdom can throw at you. Tunics, wraps, prestige silks, even mildly cursed battleware. But the next bundle you're handed is neither grand nor spiritual. It's small, lumpy, and slightly smelly. Congratulations! You've reached the chapter of laundry that nobody ever brags about, baby nappies and warrior kilts. Yes, the underbelly of the wardrobe. Quite literally. You sit on a mat woven from grass and worry. In front of you is a pile of what can only be described as challenging. Tiny cloths tied with string. Wraps so stained they could be part of a crime scene. Leather straps with questionable smears. You blink. Start with the smallest ones, someone advises. You do. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In West African societies of the 9th century, cloth diapers were common for infants, made from soft scraps of cotton or repurposed wraps, often doubled up during rainy season. These were reused constantly and washed with herbal solutions designed to soothe the skin and chase off infection. You dip a swaddle cloth into a bowl of warm water infused with crushed neem leaves and shea bark. The scent is bitter and sharp, but your hands love it. The cloth? Less so. You begin scrubbing, gently, but with a sense of duty. This isn't just about removing stains. It's about tending to a tiny human's dignity. One young mother sits beside you with a wiggling baby tied to her back. She hums as she rinses, rhythmically patting the cloths with a palmful of crushed charcoal paste. "Charcoal eats what your eyes don't want to," she says with a wink. You nod solemnly, hoping it also eats smells. Next, you're handed a leather hip wrap with what looks like dried blood along the edges. "Don't worry," a man says. "It's his brother's." The line gets a laugh, but the cloth is real, and real dirty. It's from a hunter, possibly a part-time warrior, and it's been places. You switch from soap to ash paste and begin scrubbing. The leather groans slightly. You imagine the battles at sea, wild animals, thorn thickets, and the horror of spilled stew on laundry day. Here's your quirky tidbit: some warriors carried lucky underwraps, cloths tied around the waist or upper thighs that were believed to protect vital areas from both weapons and spirits. If these garments became too damaged or too clean, it was said the charm wore off. So yes, in some cases, warriors dirted them intentionally. You glance at one such wrap. Tied with a cowrie shell and smeared with what you hope is red clay. The owner washes it himself, very carefully, as if the cloth will rat him out. Historians still argue whether warrior-specific laundry was handled by men themselves or trusted women in the household. Some accounts suggest male garments were never washed by women after battle, for spiritual reasons. Others argue this was just a fancy way to avoid complaints about the smell. You now have a pile of cleaned infant wraps drying on a low rack. They flutter like surrender flags. A toddler grabs one and runs, giggling, into the bushes. No one chases him. "He'll be back when he's cold," his mother mutters, completely unfazed. Back at the mat, someone begins sorting older boys' garments, short tunics with frayed edges, mud-stained cloaks used for goat herding, and a small leather pouch sewn into a waistband. "Snake tooth in there," the owner brags. "For bravery." You scrub the cloak, wondering if that bravery applies to laundry, too. Next up, menstrual wraps. You're told plainly what they are, and how to treat them with herbal rinse, no harsh scrubbing, dry them flat, store them wrapped in a clean leaf. Women bleed, a girl shrugs. Cloth knows what to do. There's no awkwardness here. No giggles. No shame. Just another kind of body truth that gets rinsed, folded, and readied for reuse. Nearby, an older man washes a wide sash, stiff from long days in the market sun. You ask why he doesn't just get a new one. "This one's already shaped to my anger," he says. You think he's kidding. You hope he's kidding. Someone dumps a pile of ritual belts, thin strips of cloth tied around the waist during coming-of-age ceremonies. They're worn under other garments and are often smeared with red palm oil and ash. You're told to rinse them gently but never let them touch the ground. Why? Because they remember pain, the woman says simply. And you obey. Here's a callback. Remember the girl who was waiting for her fiancé to write her name on the bride price list? She shows you a tiny wrap cloth she's secretly begun stitching. For when it's time, she says softly. Can't wait to wash it. You don't say anything. Just nod. By now, your mat is full again, small lives, big stains, hard-earned softness. You take a moment to look around. There's a boy folding his older brother's cloak. A woman hanging a headscarf that doubled as a sling. A warrior smoothing his freshly rinsed belt and murmuring something under his breath. Maybe a prayer. Maybe a thank you. Everywhere, cloth breathes. And through it, so do you. Because to wash someone's mess isn't just kindness. It's recognition. You've now washed cloths with stories, swaddles with magic, and battle gear with questionable origins. You're starting to believe there's nothing laundry can't contain. But just when you think the drama is drying out, splat. A woman screams. A streak of palm oil is sliding, slowly and gloriously, down the front of a festival tunic you just spent 20 minutes helping to fold. Everyone freezes. And so begins the saga of festival clothes and emergency spills. This isn't just any wrap. It's ceremonial, a crisp, hand-dyed, triple-stitched stunner of indigo and white, embroidered along the hem with brass beads. It was meant to be worn tomorrow, at a naming feast. It's also now hosting a vibrant, greasy orange blob that resembles a defeated comet. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In 9th century Ghana, clothes worn for festivals, religious ceremonies, or rites of passage were carefully prepared days in advance. These weren't just outfits. They were statements, visual prayers, community signposts. A spill wasn't just annoying. It was an omen. The woman who dropped the bowl of red stew, with chicken bones still intact, looks like she might evaporate. Someone clutches a calabash. Another whispers, "Don't cry on it," that makes the stain stick. You're handed the tunic. You know what to do, they say. You do? Apparently, you do. First, don't rub it. That's the #1 rule. You need to blot, gently, using a cooled paste of crushed ash and soap pod, mixed into a spreadable gray smear that smells faintly of citrus and fear. You apply it with a folded piece of banana leaf, pressing down in rhythmic dabs. No scrubbing. Just firm kindness. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some believe that festival garments remember embarrassment, so if you wash them angrily, they'll wrinkle on purpose next time. One woman whispers that a tunic once refused to dry after its owner insulted it mid-wash. You choose your words carefully. Someone brings you miracle water, a blend of river runoff, eucalyptus leaf extract, and a few drops of fermented millet beer. It's not for drinking, the boy warns. You don't ask how they discovered that. You mix the miracle water with the ash paste, apply it again, and wait. Everyone stares. Even the chickens stop clucking. A bead of sweat slides down your back. 5 minutes pass. You rinse gently, turning the cloth in slow spirals under cool water. And it's working. The oil fades, not completely, but enough to become a story instead of a crisis. It was attacked by flavor, someone offers. Everyone laughs. The tunic is saved. Sort of. Add a bead over that spot, a woman suggests. Nobody questions bead logic. Bead logic, you're told, is the ancient art of covering flaws with flair. You're into it. Now that the stain panic has eased, the preparations resume. You're shown a dance skirt being pleated by hand, using heated stones to form the folds. Another woman is gently fluffing a shoulder shawl with eagle feathers tied into the fringe. These garments aren't for everyday use. They're worn when words fail. You ask what happens if someone forgets to prep their festival clothes. They all answer in unison, they don't. To appear at a naming, marriage, or harvest ceremony in unwashed or unpressed clothes is to arrive without intention. It's like showing up to a drum circle without a heartbeat, says one of the elders. That line gives you chills. Historians still argue whether festival dress codes were imposed by community leaders or maintained organically by shared expectations. Either way, there's no doubt these clothes carried meaning. Colors chosen deliberately, patterns tied to clan ancestry, even seems stitched in prayer. And the preparation? That's half the celebration. You help carry garments out to dry, carefully pegged by size and occasion. One girl sings softly as she hangs her wedding scarf, stitched with crescent moons. "It'll blow kisses to the wind," she says. "He'll hear it if he's paying attention." Another woman lays out a performance tunic, with sleeves longer than arms, used during a drumming dance that tells the story of a lion falling in love with the moon. She checks the cloth 3 times for wrinkles. "Moonlight is judgmental," she says. You nod. Here's a callback: the indigo sash you dyed earlier? Someone's borrowed it. Temporarily. For the blessing bowl bearer, they explain. Blue keeps the prayers cool. You decide that's fair. Suddenly, a child shrieks with joy. He's dropped a second bowl of stew, this time on his own tunic. Silence again. Then, the loudest laughter yet. Because when it's your own stain? Well, that's just practice for next time. As the sun dips lower, the festival garments are gathered, folded with reverence, dusted with fine sand to keep them grounded, yes, really, and stored in special baskets lined with braided straw and crushed mint. The smell is sweet, sharp, and alive. A woman pats the final bundle. Let it rest now. It has to be ready to dance. You lie back on the mat, exhausted but weirdly satisfied. Around you, everything smells of readiness, of stories that are about to be worn. And maybe spilled on again. But now, you know how to fix that. The sun hangs low now, casting golden slants across the village like spilled dye through the sky. Chickens wobble toward home. Smoke from cooking fires curls lazily in the wind. You've survived another day of washing. But before the stars come out, you're about to discover the final frontier of domestic drama, the drying racks. And the people who will absolutely, without question, try to borrow your best tunic. Again. You return to the drying field, a space between 2 acacia trees where rows of line-strung fabric wave gently like banners of some strange, beautiful laundry kingdom. There are at least 30 garments here, flapping, drying, judging. Somewhere among them is your newly cleaned indigo smock. You hung it carefully. You marked the spot with a broken gourd shard. You double-knotted the peg. It's gone. Check the 3rd line, someone says casually, not looking up from her stitching. The one near the goat pen. Things migrate. You hurry over. And sure enough, your smock is there, draped neatly over the line, except now it's half-folded like someone tried it on. There's even a suspicious fingerprint on the sleeve. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In many traditional communities, communal drying spaces were essential. Private clotheslines were rare. People shared lines, space, and sometimes, unwillingly, garments. This worked well, unless someone accidentally grabbed a neighbor's party wrap thinking it was theirs. You hear a woman scolding someone. A boy, maybe 10 years old, is clutching a tunic far too large for him. It fits, he insists. The spirit said it wanted to be mine. Nice try, she snaps. And here's your quirky tidbit: in some places, it was believed that if a piece of cloth was left alone too long on a line, it would get bored and try to follow someone else home. So yes, the drying process came with its own set of superstitions: never leave garments hanging after dark, never whistle while retrieving them, and definitely never say, "I'll grab it later," because then someone else will. You search for your smock again, this time more thoroughly. It's still there. But now it's being used as a pillow. An elderly man is napping under the tree, head resting squarely on the most labor-intensive laundry item you've ever handled. He snores contentedly. You pause. Do you wake him? Someone walks by and pats your shoulder. He does that. He'll dream your laundry back to you. Okay. You wait. 10 minutes pass. Eventually, he rolls over. You snatch the smock, smooth it, and check for damage. Miraculously, it's fine. Just emotionally confused. Nearby, a group of young girls is trying on each other's head wraps. One tucks a flower behind her ear and twirls. Another squeals. Don't stretch it. I just washed that. Another pipes up, then it should be ready for dancing. You watch them skip around, flinging wraps, laughing, bartering. Cloth here isn't hoarded. It's shared, but competitively. Which means if you want your garment back, you better claim it politely, of course, but firmly. Laundry isn't just fabric, it's currency. Historians still argue whether these informal borrowings were socially regulated or completely chaotic. But oral traditions suggest a clear rule: if you wear it, you wash it. If you ruin it, you fix it. If you hide it, you're on your own. Someone walks up with a tunic that definitely isn't theirs. Is this yours? They ask. It's not. You both stare at it. Maybe it wants to be yours, they offer. No thanks, you say. I already have one that naps. A woman calls out from the other side of the field. She's holding up a wrap with neon-colored streaks of red and green. Everyone turns. That's the party cloth. The infamous party cloth. It's gone missing 4 times in the past month, and now it's back dried, folded, and left anonymously on the line. Everyone gasps. Someone mutters, "It's been forgiven." A few people clap. The cloth flutters in approval. You return to your drying rack and start collecting garments, this time double-checking each one. Your indigo smock, now freed from naps and misunderstandings, is crisp, clean, and smelling faintly of ash and lemon leaves. You fold it with respect and tuck it under your arm like a badge of honor. Just as you turn to leave, someone stops you. Hey! This yours? They're holding a half-dry headscarf, one you definitely saw hanging 2 racks over. You shake your head. No, you say. But it's beautiful, you add. They nod and drape it back gently. Here's a callback. Remember the woman who said, "We wash together because we live together"? This is that, again. In every lend, borrow, return, and awkward "sorry I wore your tunic," the fabric holds memory. Not just yours. Everyone's. As the sun begins to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows over the now bare lines, people begin walking back to their homes. Some carry baskets. Others wear their clean clothes right away. A few are still arguing about who owes whom a rinse. You follow behind, smock folded, feet dusty, heart oddly full. Because nothing is truly yours until it's been lost once and returns still warm from the sun. The wind smells like change. There's a heaviness in the air, not just from heat, but from pressure. Clouds gather far out over the horizon, dense and gray with that unmistakable look of promise and threat. The goats are restless. The children are barefoot and wide-eyed. Everyone is moving a little faster now, because this is the final sprint before the sky decides to open, the last rinse before the rain season. You step into the river clearing again. It looks different now, tense, expectant. The air hangs thick and wet, like the world is holding its breath. Your feet squish in mud that wasn't there yesterday. The water rushes faster than before, carrying tiny leaves and long threads of grass. This is the final wash of the dry season, and it matters. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In Swahili and West Africa, the transition between dry and rainy seasons wasn't just meteorological, it was logistical. Everything shifted. Roads disappeared. Markets flooded. Laundry routines had to adjust or stop completely. Clean clothes were prepared in bulk and stored carefully to outlast weeks of downpour, when open-air washing became impossible. You're carrying a bundle of clothes too important to risk, and too used to go unwashed. Tunics. Scarves. Wraps with little burn holes and faded colors that still manage to hum with personality. Everyone's carrying something. Even the quietest members of the village, those who normally send others to wash for them, are here today. No one sits this one out. A woman beside you eyes the sky. One drop, and that's it, she says. After that, the river's no longer ours. There's no joking this time. No gossip. No playful splashes. The rhythm is sharp. Focused. Cloth hits stone with purpose. Hands work with the speed and grace of people who know time is slippery. You bend to rinse a wrap that belonged to a now-gone grandmother, its fringe unraveling like memory itself. You move faster, kneading, rinsing, wringing. The water splashes and darkens. A girl hands you a palm brush without asking. Another tosses you a pot of clay paste. There's no room for explanations now. Only action. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some communities believed that cloth washed right before the first rain would be blessed, imbued with the power of new growth. But if washed during the first storm, it could absorb confusion or attract illness. Timing, as ever, is everything. Historians still argue whether these rain rituals were symbolic or practical. After all, drying fabric in a flood-prone village isn't easy. But over time, the lines blurred. Ritual became routine, and routine took on the weight of myth. The first storm wasn't just water. It was a line drawn in the sky. You scrub with intensity now, hands sore but steady. You can feel the storm coming. The breeze lifts the edge of your tunic. The trees sigh. Someone whispers, "We'll beat it." Another woman mutters, "Not this year." You finish your last tunic and pass it to a younger girl who hangs it on a tall rack, its legs braced with stones. All around, cloth rises into the wind, flapping like pages of a sacred book. The colors shimmer against the gray sky: indigo, rust, cream, marigold, each one screaming not yet. Suddenly, a drop. Then another. The sky growls. And then, with all the elegance of a collapsing drum, the downpour. It hits fast and full, drenching everything in seconds. The river surges. The air smells like wet bark and lightning. People shout, grab bundles, duck under trees, scramble for baskets. You hold your smock close, already soaked. There's no point running now. But instead of panic, there's laughter. Wild, chaotic laughter. Someone yells, "Too late," and dances in place. Another waves a wet cloth like a flag. A boy holds out his arms and spins. You're drenched, But you're grinning. Because yes, the laundry is soaked again. But it was clean first. And that means you won. One woman cups her hands under the rain, catching water like it's precious. This is the rinse of God, she says softly. Let the sky finish our work. You lower your head, letting rain run down your face, over your shoulders, into your collar. You close your eyes. The wind is loud now. The trees bend. Cloth whips on lines, some of it breaking loose, flying down toward the river. No one chases it. It's too late now. Let the rain have it. And here's a callback, remember that burnt, blessed wrap? You see it now, laid flat on a rock, steam rising as rain hits the heat still trapped in the fabric. A woman sits beside it, calm and still, letting the storm wash everything clean again. You stay out in the rain longer than most. Soaked, spent, but somehow, full. The cloth in your arms clings to you like a second skin. You press it to your chest. And for the first time, you understand, laundry isn't the work. Care is. And care always leaves a mark. 300-word wind down the rain softens. The sky, still heavy, begins to quiet. You walk slowly back to the village, water trickling down your spine, the earth beneath your feet now a soft sponge, every step a hush. The chatter of the rain fades into drips, then droplets, then mist. Garments hang limp now, still clean, still proud. Some rest in bundles under clay roofs, others flutter on stubborn lines. The goats are sheltering. The chickens have vanished. The world is suddenly, wonderfully, still. You lay your smock across a low stool, smoothing the wrinkles with fingers that know exactly what to do. You feel the texture rough, worn, honest. A day's worth of hands and rivers and laughter stitched invisibly into its weave. You sit down beside it, back against a warm wall. The air smells like wet earth and cooling wood. Smoke drifts gently from a nearby hearth. Someone stirs a pot of stew. A lullaby hums through the air, just loud enough to feel, not hear. Your body relaxes. The rain did not undo your work. It finished it. The storm will pass. The fabric will dry. And tomorrow, maybe not bright, maybe not easy, you'll do it again. Because the stains will come back. The spills. The wrinkles. The mysterious smells. But so will you. With your hands. With your heart. With your blue-tinged smock and your tired, smiling eyes. And the cloth will know you. And that's enough. Good night.